So, let's get into the time where, where me and Flame and, Platinum tried to break into the oldest profession in the book, which is prostitution. Now, how we try to break into this profession is that, I'm always looking for different ways to make money. Nah, man. Always looking for different streams of income, selling drugs and things of that nature, it's cool. I love it. I love the rush. But, it's always different ways, you can make money. So just, how I do, just follow me and then, just follow me through the story. So I remember on the news this particular day, I was at my condo, just finished working out, and I remember specifically I had Vito's new album playing, Epitome. Vito just put out an album called Epitome, which I had blasting all through the condo while I was working out. So at this particular time, I finished working out, so I'm, walking through the condo blasting Vito's album. Like I said, Epitome, my phone rings while I'm walking to the kitchen. I look at my phone, it's my nigga Uno, who I've known since, junior high school, I knew him since I was like 12 years old, So I pick up the phone, I'm like, Uno, what's good, nigga? So, call him Hollywood Uno, Uno's a pimp nigga that I grew up with, So Uno hit me up. So at the same time, I'm speaking to Uno, I see online that my bro, Booster, got a house for sale, Booster had two houses. He had his main house where he lived at, where he, had the Booster bashes and then he had another house that he barely used that was just sitting there, and that's why he wanted to sell it. So I'm in my heart haunting the picture in the post of him wanting to sell, the house, and then talking to my nigga Uno. We call him Hollywood Uno, and we get into how he got the name Hollywood Uno. So I'm like, Uno, what's good? So Uno's like, yeah, what up, Tony? Catching up on, good things, And he was like, you still doing your thing out there in Dallas. I'm like, yeah. I was like, you're still fucking with the bitches, pimping the bitches or whatever. And he was like, always, nigga, Said my blood, is in me, not on me, you dig? I'm like, I could hear that. So we chopping it up. The nigga, Uno was like, yo, that he gonna be coming to Dallas, cause, he said, I done been everywhere from the Pineapple to the Big Apple, he said, I done pimped every bitch, in every state. He said, it's time to take my talents to Dallas. So I'm like, for sure, nigga, I'ma hold you down. So, we talking, and somehow we got to the conversation about the Booty Ranch. Now, the Booty Ranch is an underground spot in New York and Queens. Shout out to my nigga Majesty, shout out to Prince. What they would do is they would hold underground parties for all the strippers, the prostitutes, the dope boys. And they would send like a mass text to whoever was in their contact list. They would send a mass text, because what they had to do was they had to switch locations every other night to avoid the police. So you might pull up on a block and it'd be real quiet on the block. And then, you go into this house and you pay your money, in the house. And when you go through, you see strippers, giving lap dances, chicks taking niggas upstairs to do VIP, all that shit. So we talked about that. So I'm like, yo, we need to do something like that, but here in Dallas, I see my man got a spot. Big ass house out in Dallas. Maybe we could start something like the Booty Ranch, but in Dallas, but a little bit more upscale. He was with it. So I'm like, alright, so I told him I'm gonna chop it up with you more when you get to Dallas. He said, cool. Man. So I hung up with Uno. I immediately hit up Booster. I'm like, yo, Booster. I was like, you ain't sell that spot yet, right? He was like, nah, I just put the pictures up online. I said, yo, I got a business proposition for you. I was like, don't sell a spot yet. I want to set up a meeting with me, you, and my homeboy Uno, and we're gonna talk about how we could make money from this spot. And and then Booster said, well, it ain't really about the money, it's just that I'm not using the spot. He was like, I got my main spot where I live at. And then, I just got this house just sitting there, you know what I mean? But I'm like, cool. I was like, don't sell a spot yet. Just, you know what I mean? Just meet up with me and my boy, and we're gonna talk about, you know what I mean? So he said, cool. So I told him take the pictures offline, you know what I mean? So he deleted the post. So I told him I'd get with him later. So somewhere down the line, of course, me and Platinum Flame, we still doing our thing. I ran an idea about it. I'm like, yo, man. I was like, we need to get into, to like some pimping shit. Yo, that's when Flame and Platinum looking at me like pimping. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, me, we made some money on some bitches. I was like, getting money in the street is cool. But we need to try to break into this pimping shit. I was like, my nigga Hollywood Uno. You know what I mean? Pimp nigga I knew since I was 12. He coming down to Dallas and, I'm sure we can make some good money with my nigga. So Platinum and Flame agreed, they down with it. So I was like, so just let me put everything into play. And then when I put the plan in motion, green light on everything. So they like, alright, cool. So now, it comes time when my nigga Uno is flying in, you know what I mean? So Uno flying in, I'm picking him up from the airport, And then my nigga Uno, he's Dominican and black. His father is African American, quote unquote. His father's a black man, and his mother's Dominican, so Uno's like brown to dark skin with green eyes. Long, silky, wavy hair like Lloyd. No matter how Lloyd the singer used to have his hair, he got long, wavy Indian hair like that. But he's dark skin with green eyes, so always at attention from the bitches, you know what I mean? So Uno come through, fly in the motherfucker G'd up, you know what I'm saying? Jerry on, you know what I mean? Louis Gucci, duffel bags, all that shit. He had like 3 bitches with him, bad bitches, you know what I mean? He had a black Spanish and a Bayesian chick, a chick that's mixed with like Chinese and black or some shit. So I'm like, Uno, what's good? I get out, pound, hug, real like, oh, my nigga, like, So Uno like, what's good, baby? You like, what's good, Tony? I see you still fly to the motherfucking little light-skinned ass nigga. I'm like, yeah, I know. So, he introduced me to, to the 3 girls he was with. You know what I mean? Passion Strawberry. And the other girl name escapes me. You know what I mean? I think her name was China. Because, she's mixed with Chinese and black, some shit like that. So we, we made small talk. And then cool. So, we all get in the car and shit. So we driving, me and, Uno talking. I'm in the driver, Uno's in the passenger seat, the 3 girls in the back. So we talking, we chopping it up, and, I asked him that he remember how he got the name Hollywood Uno. And that's when Uno started laughing, was like, yeah, because, Uno went to Cali for the first time. And he knocked this pimp nigga for his white bitch, this bad white bitch that looked like Pamela Anderson. This bitch looked like Pamela Anderson in her prom when she was on Baywatch, out in Cali. And that's ever since we've been calling this nigga Hollywood Uno, you know what I mean? So we talked about that. We also reminisced on Sinful to P. R.I.P. to Sinful to P. Sinful to P was a pimp nigga from Chicago, you know what I mean? That used to do YouTube vlogs. That was very inspirational to not only pimps, but just to, niggas in general. And, we met, Sinful to P before, you know what I mean, when he had speaking engagements and, we went out, So R.I.P. Sinful to P, we reminisced on him. So I'm like, yeah, man, my man got a spot. Big ass house. I was thinking, we could, open up a spot kind of like the Booty Ranch, but more upscale, you know what I mean, to where we only deal with like, businessmen, truck drivers. When all black, of course, you know what I mean, because, we just never know, we taking our chances either way, but I'm like, with niggas, we got a better chance. And then I said, I think I got a way to where, if the police was to run up on us, we could make it seem like it's legit. So he's like, he with it, so I'm like, so yeah, so I was like, I'm gonna set up the meeting with me, you, and my man, and we're gonna go through and look at the spot. So he's like, cool, so I take Uno and then 3 chicks to, to the Airbnb he's written. I drop them off, and I'm like, alright, so we agreed to meet on this date, which I think was a day and a half later. He was like, alright, cool. So him and 3 girls going to Airbnb. I take off, you know what I mean? Hit up Booster, set up a lunch date. I also hit up Magnificent Tyler because Magnificent Tyler used to live in Vegas and, she kind of dealt, within that lifestyle of, you know, you know, like pimping bitches and, dealing in that lifestyle. So I told Magnificent to come meet me, Hollywood Uno, and Booster at a certain restaurant. We was gonna have lunch, but outside, it was one of the restaurants where you could eat outside because around this time the weather was nice. So it was like May, June, in Dallas. Cool. So me and Uno show up to the restaurant. Booster's already there. He's on his phone, sitting at a table outside, So when me and, Uno walk up, he gets off the phone with whoever he was on the phone with, pound shake, hug with me, You're like, what up, Tony? I'm like, Booster, what's good, baby? I like, look like you losing weight, nigga. He was like, yeah, I'm trying. So you're like, how you doing, brother? So he shakes hands with Uno. We all 3 of us sit down and shit, right? So we, have a small talk. So I tell Booster, and I was like, yo, we want to take, that house you trying to sell. We trying to take that and make it like an entertainment spot for niggas to come and, chill with the ladies and deal with the women and, you know what I mean? And I explained to him that my man here, is a pimp, he got bitches. And instead of being on the street with it, we could be a little bit more classy where we deal with businessmen who like to get lap dances and other services and, things like that. And I explained the booty ranch to him and, but I said we're going to do it a little bit more classier than, than the booty ranch, you know what I mean? And Booster just started laughing. And he was like, well, Tony, you like my brother. He was like, whatever you need from me, you got it, you know what I mean? He was like, the only thing is, if anything goes wrong, I ain't got nothing to do with it. That's what me and Uno started laughing. I'm like, for sure, my nigga. So he was like, I give you the green light, you know what I mean? He was like, matter of fact, here. He handed me the keys. He was like, here's the keys to the spot. And then, he was, he told me the address. He was like, y'all can go check it out. Do your thing. He, just, whatever. He was like, just be careful. I was like, for sure. And then I told Booster, we also gonna break you off, And he was like, no, it ain't about the money, but he said, but when it comes to the money, I ain't turning down nothing but my collar, And that's what Uno said, turts, you know what I mean? So that's when Booster said, yo, well, I gotta go. He was like, he stood up. He took out a money clip, took, a wad of money from the money clip, dropped a $100 bill. He said, I gotta go, but he was like, yo, just let me know if anything. And then Uno said, I appreciate that. He was like, I'm definitely gonna have my girls take care of you. When you come by the spot, Booster said, huh? He said, now we talking. So as a Booster walks off later, he was like, oh, he said, Tony, I'm gonna text you that address as soon as I get in the car. I was like, alright. So it has me and Uno is talking and Booster, walks off, gets in his car. We hear some heels clicking. We turn around. It's Magnificent. So that's when Hollywood Uno like, be like, damn, who that? I was like, that's my homegirl. I was like, so we, I stood up. So Magnificent walks up like, hey, Tony. I'm like, hey, so we kiss on the cheek, hug. I was like, this is my boy, Uno. She was like, Uno gets up, he smiles. She was like, oh, you got some pretty eyes, He was like, thank you. So Uno pulls out a chair for her, even though this nigga's a pimp, he's still a gentleman like. So, so we sitting, we talking. So I run the plan down to Magnificent. I'm like, yo, this is my man, he has a couple girls, you know what I mean? It's Hollywood Uno. And I explained why we call him Hollywood Uno, how he bagged the white bitch. So she was like, oh, so she was like, you pimpin'. And he just started laughing. She was like, yeah, I'm pimp. She was like, I'm pimp proof. She said, I don't pay niggas pay me. Uno was like, he was like, I could dig it. He said, and then Uno said, I done knocked some of the baddest bitches. She said, yeah. She's like, I'm from Cali. She said, I done, seen and heard it all. And then, they kind of went back and forth. And I said, yo, listen, we here for business. I was like, so basically, I told Uno, the reason I got Magnificent is, we gonna need a madam, someone that could watch over the house and over the girls. I was like, I think Mag could do that, you know what I mean? Because Mag, as you can see, is headstrong. She don't take no shit. I think Magnificent, is gonna run the house while me and you keep our nose clean because, you just never know. And I also explained to him, I was gonna holler at my girl, Missy King, out in New York in the Bronx, who has like a swinging company to where she throws swinger parties and she puts out flyers. So I said I think if we have her make us personal flyers with her production company on it, Missy King's events. If they ever kick in the door, we could just say we swingers and we in poly relationships. That way, we have an alibi, you know what I mean? And that's when Magnificent pointed to me and said, smart, and then took a sip of her drink. I'm like, yeah. So I was like, so yo, all in agreement, right? They was like, yeah. I was like, yo, let's go take a look at the spot. So that's when, all three of us go over to where Booster gave me the address. And we're looking at the house. Nice house. Big ass house, even got a pool in the back, with I think maybe 7 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, maybe 3. No, I can't remember. But I just know it had a big ass house, already had TVs on the wall, and so we're like, yo, this be perfect, Nothing but upscale, I told Magnificent and Uno, we want nothing but upscale niggas, so put the word out, I even hit up Lady Wu and told Lady Wu, yo, put me in contact with her boyfriend that, she used to deal with, Malik, who's a truck driver. I said, let me get in contact with him. So that way, all the truck drivers that are black, cause I kept telling them only black people, cause I was like, white people always fold under pressure. I was like, black people too, but I feel more comfortable, we just keep it all black. So they said, cool. So that's when Uno said, he said, when did we start? Maybe we could start yesterday. But, I think we need more girls. If you only got 3, he said, nigga, I could put the word out tonight. I have motherfucking 8 more bitches here tomorrow, he popping his collar talking that shit. And the Magnificent, yeah, I hear that. So I said, so Mag, you gonna be in control of the girls who gonna run the house. I think we need a bartender. I was like, maybe I holler at, Charisma. You know what I mean? So I hollered at Charisma. Charisma agreed, she'd be the bartender and shit, the hostess. And Mag would look over everything. So, Uno puts the word in. He tells, one of his main bitches back home in New York, and gather up the troops, He want all his girls to come to, Dallas, because we about to open up a spot. Cool. So he was like, yo, man, we talked about the Booty Ranch, which the Booty Ranch is like a ghetto version of the Bunny Ranch. What we gonna call this? I said, the Booty Palace. And that's what Max said, the Booty Palace. I said, yeah, cause the Booty Ranch was basically like the Bunny Ranch. So I'm like, I was like, I like the booty thing, cause got bitches selling ass, pussy, whatever. But the Booty Palace, cause it's more classy, it's more elegant, you know what I mean? It's, and and this house kind of reminds me of a palace, like this is a big ass house, you know what I'm saying? So, the Booty Palace. So that's with Magnificent, they laughing, they was like, yo, I kinda like it. So he was like, yo, man, we gotta get out there, campaign though, man, we need more hoes, man, you know what I'm saying? He popping his collar talking and shit, so I'm like, cool. So I was like, I think it's a strip club or whatever, where, Buns Forever gonna be performing. He said, Buns Forever. He was like, who's that? I was like, it's his porn chick. And I was like, I think if I could holler at her and get her to host, you know what I mean, we definitely, could even make more money, you know what I mean, if, cause I already hollered at Charisse Rose, cause I was like, that's what I said to him. Remember that time when I was doing porn for a little minute, he just laughed. It was like, yeah, I was like, I already hollered at Charisse Rose. She agreed to host one of our events. So he said, cool, Charisse Rose gonna, yes. But I said if I could get Buns Forever, who's a bigger name, plus Buns Forever, she's from Dallas, and so we agreed to go out. So that's when Magnificent said, all right, y'all handle that. I'm gonna get back to what I'm doing, but yeah, I'm down. Cool. So now, later on that night, me, Platinum, Uno, and Flame, we head out to the club to where Buns Forever was performing. So, we head over to the Platinum Club, you know what I mean? I think it was Big Jazz's birthday. You know what I mean? And they played, the song Bop Buns Forever called Slob on My Cat. So she performed the song. They playing the song. You can look on her page, you'll see footage of that night to where not only she performed the song, but she's in VIP with her girls, you know what I mean, while the DJ playing the song Slob on My Cat. So somehow, I knew somebody that knew her. Got me over to her section, so I'm kicking it to her. Talking to her, I'm like, yo, I'm filming the song, whatever. I was like, me and my man here, you know what I mean? We starting an underground spot, but it's gonna be upscale for, for the girls to do their thing or whatever. And, not only, girls could, do their thing, sell pussy, whatever, but, they could shoot their content, whatever. I was like, you shot a video for Slob on My Cat yet? She said, nah. I was like, well, you could use our spot and shoot a video, so that way you could see if you like the location or whatever. Plus, we like for you to host one of our events. She said she down with anything long as she could make money, you know what I mean? She said money turns her on. She was like, dick don't do shit for her. She was like, it's all about the money. Cool, could respect that. So, I agree, to hook her up with like some camera people, and, let them shoot her video Slob on My Cat at the spot. She was like, cool, that sounds like a plan. So we exchanged, numbers, whatever. Cool, now we got Buns Forever on deck. So now, we at the spot now. Uno got most of his girls in there, which is like, all together is like 18 girls, you know what I mean? It's like 18 girls, plus like, it's like 15 girls. 15 girls that he already had, plus the 3 girls he bagged the night at the Buns Forever party. So I'm like, so we already got it set up. We got Flame and Platinum. They gonna be like the armed security. So Flame's at the door, you know what I mean? Plus Platinum's inside, you know what I mean? So we got 2 niggas that strapped. We got Magnificent that's gonna be checking on the bitches, you know what I mean? We got Charisma, who's like the bartender, you know what I mean? That's going, entertain the guys while they wait for the, for their girls or whatever. And me and Uno, we gonna kind of stay away from the spotlight. We gonna be there, but we not gonna be there. So anyway, so we started setting up. So now, I also had my man, the wise man, light-skinned wise, he's at the door. Like I said prior in another story, he's in his 50s, but he's buff as hell, martial arts boxing. He's at the door, he's patting motherfuckers down, making sure, and we got menus to, could I set it up just like the Bunny Ranch to where, the guy will come in, he'll sit at the bar, have a drink, talk with Charisma, but then we have all the girls that's available walk out, and each girl would say their name and what they do, and then he'd pick, which girl he liked, and then that's when the girl would sit with him, and then they'd go to a menu, you know what I mean? And at the same time, I got Missy King's, Missy King, who has Missy King's events making my flyers. So that way it looks like it's a swinger event. So cool. So now we working. So Buns Forever comes through. She likes the spot. She agrees to shoot her video there. So now they shooting, Slob on My Cat at the house and shit. Some of the girls that Uno had is in the video. You can look this up. Buns Forever, Slob on My Cat. So they shooting music video shit. Motherfuckers having fun, girls, all that. Boom. So now we starting to get the customers to come in. So now, like I said, the customer, you know what I mean? He sent a text saying he saw the flyer, da-da-da-la, of course he asked him, tell him to come through. So when he come through, he comes in, he gets patted down. And then that's when Magnificent, asks him, is he part of law enforcement, whatever. He says no, and then, she was like, so that's when he has to touch Magnificent first, and then that's when she looks, make sure he's not wired and all that, you know what I'm saying? So then they walk in, and then that's when the girls come out, There's like 15, 18 girls walking out, G-strings, thongs, and lingerie, and they line up, each one of them say their name, so We had it rolling like that. Plus Charisma, she's flirting. She's walking around in a G-string and thong. So sometimes they wanted to get with Charisma, but Charisma like, nah, I don't sell pussy, but I give a lap dance. Shit like that. So now shit is going smooth, you know what I mean? So now our first big party we had was with Charisse Rose. Charisse Rose, I shot a scene with her. If you look up, my porn name, Jake Banger, and look up Charisse Rose, you know what I mean? You see us, so Charisse Rose comes through, she hosts us a party, dance, we did good. Now, this is where, kinda like the problem comes in. It was this guy that lived across the street, 'cause this neighborhood was like a upper class black neighborhood. So a lot of the people that lived around this neighborhood was retired firemen, police officers, or they were still active. So it was this one black dude that lived like across the street from the spot, who used to always try to holler at Magnificent Tyler, older gentleman. I think his wife might have died a year prior. Older dude, you know what I mean? His name escapes me right now. I think his name was, with Hans. I think his last name was Hans. But his first name was James. Real pain in the ass. So this motherfucker, you look just like motherfucker, you look like the father from Fresh Prince. You know what I mean? He used to always try to holler at Mag. Every time Mag would pull up, in her little BMW, he used to always try to holler at Mag, and he used to always see girls, coming, so he used to always try to holler at Mag. And Mag sometimes would flirt, and then sometimes she didn't want to be bothered. Cool. So this goes on. Prior. And then, you got the girls when they're not working, they're in the pool, jumping in and out of the pool, skinny dipping. So, of course he got his binoculars, he's seeing the girls skinny dipping, so he's obsessed. Till one day he tried to holler at, one of the girls, and they snapped on him. And she said something to the effect that, nigga, you know what I mean, I'm about that bag, maybe they spinning that bag, it's like flipped on him. And so he said, okay. Now, one of the odds that this motherfucker knows Officer, Detective Barnes. What are the odds of that this nigga know Detective Barnes, and Detective Barnes don't like us? So he's like, yo, I think these motherfuckers is running the whole house, telling on us, Now, mind you, we get money, we get money. Girls is turning over a profit, Magnificent's turning a profit. We able to drop money off to motherfucking Booster. Booster's happy, you know what I'm saying? So, at first, Detective Barnes didn't believe him, you know what I mean? Until I pull up one day, you know what I mean? Lamborghini, I pull up, engine loud. Now Detective Barnes and the dude, James or whatever, they in the cut. And James like, look, see. So cause he hears my engine, purling, growling and shit. He hears my engine like boom, boom. He hears the engine. So Detective Barnes look, and then Detective Barnes' eyes get big. He like, wait a minute. So he see my window roll down. He see it's me. And then he see Mag comes out, hands me a bag. You know what I mean? So I drive off, and then Mag, walks back in the house, with the heels and the short skirt on. So he's like, yo. He was like, I know that guy. He was like, that's Tony. That's Duffle Bag Tony. I've been trying to bust that nigga. He was like, from what I know, Tony deals with drugs. He don't deal with no hoes. Because he don't know about Hollywood Uno. You know what I mean? So he was like, yeah, So he was like, yeah, we gonna get this motherfucker. You know what I mean? Now I don't know that this is happening. So somehow, down the line, while we doing our thing at the Booty Palace, making money hand over fist, we even dropping money off to Booster, like we giving this nigga like $10,000 a month. You know what I mean? So, we had Booster come through, and then, Uno had it to where he told his hoes, give Booster some pussy, do whatever, he wants y'all to do. So, Booster had a ball, you know what I mean? So, at that same time, me and Platinum, we arguing about who could fuck the most bitches. I'm like, yo, I could fuck. So we set up a marathon to where we had the rooms lined up to where, we going chick for chick. This is the same day. So I'm there. So boom, so me and Platinum, we fucking like mad bitches the same day. You know what I mean? So Uno, he like, man, I only fuck a bitch if she pay me, so Uno wasn't with it, so Uno left. So, but me and Platinum, we going room for room, fucking bitches, seeing who gonna tap out first. So we going room for room. And it was this one girl I wanted to get with, but Booster just, I guess he fell in love with the chick because he just kept saying, man, chill, chill, chill. So me and, Platinum, we fucking all the bitches in the house. We going room to room, fucking matting bitches till that nigga couldn't go no more. So I won the marathon and shit, you know what I mean? So that was crazy as shit, you know what I mean? So, we telling the girls, give it up. All the bitches that start clapping their asses, boom, 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 real loud. This nigga Booster still in there with the girl and shit, So that was like some of the fun things we would do at the house and shit, right? So as time goes on, me and Buns Forever became cool. We set up a big event to where we was gonna have Buns Forever hosting. We put out the flyer, everything. So now, mind you, we got Detective Barnes, watching us. So Detective Barnes is watching. So, like clockwork, instead of me pulling up this time, now Hollywood Uno's pulling up. And, Charisma now is coming out, and she hands the duffel bag to the Hollywood Uno. And he pulls off. So now, Detective Barnes radio to the officers, follow him. So now they following Hollywood Uno. They pull Uno over. So they thinking they gonna find drugs. All they found was money in the bag, you know what I mean? But it was a certain amount to where, they couldn't really fuck with him. But now they've gone through the car. Uh-oh, they find a gun under the seat. So they're like, oh. So they're like, okay. They was like, what about this gun? So Uno like, fuck. Cause, Uno hadn't been in trouble a couple times, but, he ain't supposed to have no gun. So now they lock him up. So this is, unbeknownst to me, you know what I mean? I ain't know he's locked up. So the whole time, we going forward with our plans, you know what I mean? So now we put the flyer out that Buns Forever's gonna be hosting at the Booty Palace, you know what I mean? So like I said, Missy King, put out a flyer, and it has, the number, and it has Missy King's events on it. So cool. So Hollywood Uno's locked up and they held Uno because I think he had a warrant in New York for some other shit. I think an assault charge on a nigga that tried to play with him. So, and the nigga wound up telling on him, so he had a warrant, so they held him, and they about to send him back to New York. So I keep getting texts from Uno's phone, cause, I think your people or whoever could come get your property or some shit, or you could request for me, somehow. I started getting texts from his number, and it told me to meet, at the restaurant where we ate at before. So when I get there, it's Madame Rita. Now this is Uno's mother. Now Uno's mother's probably like in her late 50s, early 60s, but still fonder than a motherfucker. You know what I mean? Just a little older Spanish woman. She looked just like the model Selena Castle. You look up Selena Castle, she got the same kind of body, face, just older. So I'm like, Madame Rita, what you doing here? And what would happen was, Uno had his number forwarded to his mom's phone. And then she started texting me, but she didn't want to talk over the phone. She said, yeah, I didn't want to talk over the phone. So my son had his number, forward to my phone so I could text you. And I didn't want to talk over the phone, but they picked Uno up. They arrested him. And they found the gun in the car. Plus, he has a warrant back home. So I'm like, fuck. So I'm like, well, we're going to take care of that. We got the best lawyers, One thing about, Farrago, he always makes sure we got white Jewish lawyers. Like I said prior, he always told us, never go to court with a black lawyer. You lose every time. Get you a white Jewish lawyer to beat the case. So I was like, we got him on that. She's like, she was like, you always did right by my son, even when I was young. That's what Madame Rita told me. She said, but I just want you to be careful, cause, I think they watching, that spot. So I'm like, yeah, we got everything in place, Madame Rita, everything's in place. She was like, good. So she asked me, how's the family? I said, everything good. She said, cool. So, she kissed me on the cheek. She was like, remember what I said? Be careful. So I'm like, cool. So I put the, I let the word, be known amongst the crew that, got locked up, but, we taking kids, and it's legal fees, and it's lawyers or whatever. So we had the lawyer negotiate a bail and shit, but he couldn't make bail until he took care of that warrant in New York. Cool. You know what I mean? So now, Platinum, me and Flame be looking after, his girls. Booty Palace is rolling. So now comes the night of the Buns Forever event. We got a packed house, all businessmen. We got motherfucking, truck drivers. We got Booster and his friends, there. Everybody there, you know what I'm saying? Women twerking, me. A lot of, niggas, bitches selling pussy, all kinds of shit. So it's popping, 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 popping. You know what I mean? We had, big events, supposed to be a 2-day event. Buns Forever hosting, right? So the first night went well. So the second night I was gonna go, that's when, London was like, yo, she heard that me and Mag messing around, but me and Magnificent wasn't messing around. We was just doing business, but I didn't want to tell her that, we wanted a fucking whorehouse or whatever. So I'm like, nah, we ain't messing around. She said, well, she was like, you better, stay the next night with me, or, when you come back, I won't be here. I was like, come on, don't start that shit. So me and London kind of get to an argument. She was like, look, if you leave this house tonight, this relationship's over, because I'm hearing you fucking this bitch Magnificent. I'm like, I'm not fucking her. So she was like, you better be with me till the sun come up. So I'm like, fuck. So now it's a 2-day event. So it's Friday. Now it's Saturday. And London's saying if I go out tonight, that the relationship's over. Which I kind of would have been like, fuck it, but it wasn't until London, because all London had on was a thong and a bra when she turned around and walked away, and I seen that ass bounce, and I'm like, damn, I can't let that go. So I text, Platinum and Flame. I said, yo, I ain't gonna make it, there tonight. So Flame texts me back like, what? So he calls me with Platinum on the phone, 3-way call. I'm like, yeah. I was like, my girl, London tripping. I was like, I can't go tonight. Y'all gonna have to hold it down. They like, fuck. They was like, damn, man. It was like, this shit gonna be popping, you know what I mean? I'm like, yeah. I was like, I'ma text Buns and tell her that y'all gonna hold it down. Just do everything as normal. So Flame, you're like, man, I don't know, man. He was like, I don't know, Tony, without you there, I got a feeling something gonna go wrong. I'm like, Flame, everything gonna be alright, my nigga. Y'all niggas just hold it down. It's like, y'all niggas grown as men. I got it, man. So that's when Flame's like, fuck it. And Platinum like, fuck it. So Flame and Platinum, they go on to the Booty Palace. They hold it down. Buns Forever comes for the second night. You know what I mean? Everybody doing their thing. Everybody getting money. Like I said, lap dancing. Pussy selling, anything. Bitches running around naked. All kinds of shit going on. You know what I mean? At the Booty Palace, right? So now me and London, we chilling in the house. And now the whole time I'm with London, watching a boring-ass movie, I'm cursing under my breath like, fuck, man. You know what I mean? Because, I love my girl, but they ain't nothing like, like that new pussy off being around like that new, that's why men, I think, always cheating, because ain't nothing like new pussy, you know what I mean? There's 2 things I'm addicted to in this world, and that's money and women, you know what I mean? So the whole time I'm mad as a motherfucker, right? But this is also the night that Detective Barnes and his crew is now they're gonna make the drop on us. They're gonna run in the house. So cool. Now, there's cameras throughout the house. So I'm looking on the phone. I'm looking at the Booty Palace on the phone while London is asleep. And we just had sex, so I'm laying it under the covers, naked. London's naked, big ass, all, spread out, because she's laying on her stomach. So so if you was to look in the room, you'd just see like a girl with a big old ass is laying on her stomach sleeping. I'm just laying there, naked under the cover, And so I'm looking. Next thing you know, I see the door bust open, and I start seeing detectives running. I'm like, oh, my mouth dropped. So now I'm standing up, I'm pacing back and forth, no for the fellas pause, but to the ladies, I'm walking back and forth, naked in the bedroom, my dick swinging back and forth. I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm holding the phone, and I'm like, what the fuck, you know what I mean? And I'm watching, the detectives kicking the door. They do Platinum on the ground, they do Flame on the ground, Buns Forever, I'm seeing they grab it hard, and then you just see a bunch of girls just scrambling and running. I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm like, shit, you know what I mean? So, they made the bus, they run in, they arrest everybody, they arrest all the girls. Magnificent got arrested, you know what I mean? Fucking, Platinum Flame got arrested, Buns Forever got arrested. So, it's like this big, bust, but the good thing is they ain't find no drugs, that they only found weed, which was like a personal use. So they only found weed, bunch of condoms there, you know what I mean? And and the guns that they did found was on Platinum and Flame. Flame is legal to carry, even though he's running the streets with us, he's legal to carry. So he just said that Platinum's gun was his. So he took the blame for both guns because he's licensed to carry. So they take Platinum guns away from him. And, he basically let Flame go, you know what I mean? But they kept his guns, though. So Flame is out, but, Magnificent and everybody else is still locked up. So I got with Farrago. Farrago said, well, he gonna pay, he gonna have it to where everybody, bail is gonna get paid. So, of course we go through three, we go through third or fourth party, so that way they can't trace us back to me and Farrago. Plus, Booster knows a lot of, good business people, so we put the money up and we bailed everybody out. So now, they all gotta face trial, so we got it, like I said, we got a good Jewish lawyer, you know what I mean? We, the same, Jude Elton that got Diddy over, we had his understudies, because, Diddy's lawyer wanted too much money, so we had his understudy. So we had, whoever, worked under Mark Van Nistelrooy, I forgot how you say his name, but we had his understudy. And so, when the little, small little trial started and they tried to, say that, we was running the prostitution ring, I had Missy King, come down and she, she said no, she throws swinger events. And she can't be everywhere, so she had me and Platinum and Flame, run the event. And that's why, and had the flyers to prove it, even though the flyers we had was only for our people. She still, made it, she took the stand saying, no, this is a swingers event, we swingers, you know what I mean? So, she testified, and she also had officers, from New York, Jersey, who are also swingers, and they said, yeah, it's not uncommon for people to be in this lifestyle, it's very discreet, explaining the swingers lifestyle. And all the girls who they claim Hollywood, was pimping on, they said, nah, we poly, so we had a good defense. So the trial lasted maybe about a month and a half, and little by little the prosecution case just fell apart, and we beat the case, and that's how we was able to beat the case. But after that, I was done, with the little, the pimp and shit. I was like, nah, it's just too stressful. So I could, and again, Detective Barnes was mad as a motherfucker. We got away, but good thing that, I had, Missy King make those, flyers and made it seem like a swingers party. So everybody, beat their case. Only Uno had to stay in jail because, like I said, he had that assault charge, back in New York. But other than that, we beat the case and we was able to get away again. And, that was my little experience with the, with pimping. And, after that, Booster said, yo, you packing it up. And, Booster wound up selling the house, but definitely a fun time, not me.